Hey there, honey bunnies. Welcome to episode 25, Sovereign Storytellers, with your host, Michelle Wolf. I think I got the number right this time. Last time I said the wrong podcast number. Probably I'm the only one that notices things like that. Okay, so today's podcast episode title is, Where Do You Think You're Going? Let me explain. Okay, I was listening to a support call with Hale Dwoskin. He's the guy from the Sedona Method. I don't know if any of you have ever explored the Sedona Method. I recommend it. I spent a lot of money on it in the early 2000s and did a lot of work with it. And also, because it was making me happy, quit doing it. At that time, I didn't understand, how we always talk about, you set a goal, you move toward it, the shit between you and it comes up, and we either stop or we keep going. If we understand the process, we keep going. I did not understand the process. So the better my life got, the more I freaked out. The more stuff came up, the more I freaked out. So whatever. Basically, at that time, my sole focus was work, mountain biking, and some, random obsessions with relationships. Ugh, we're never going to talk about that. Okay, so anyway, I was talking to him, listening to him, Hale Dwoskin, back to the Sedona Method. And on the support call, he was talking about this new way of releasing that has come through recently. So in the Sedona Method, you ask a series of questions of yourself. Basically, it's another wonderful tool for figuring out your story. Figuring out that you're telling yourself a story and the truth of who you are is right there available to you whenever you want it. And you ask yourself, you define what your problem is, and then you say, can I let this go? Am I willing to let it go? When will I let it go? I forget. You are familiar probably with Uncle Google, and so you can go look up the Sedona Method yourself, and you should anyway. That's not the point of this podcast. He was talking about how it's not our centered, aware, calm state that comes and goes. It's our mind that comes and goes. And when I first heard him say that, I had to listen to it a few times, because this woman he was coaching was saying a lot of things, as we do. We word vomit and we're like, and this problem and that problem and this thing and that person and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yes, I get all that. And is that any of that happening right here, right now? And of course, a question like that makes you immediately stop and go, no. Actually, right here, right now is fine. Most things are only a problem because we're thinking about them as a problem, because our thinking is the problem, right? Unless you're like gushing blood, or you are being arrested and hauled away, or you are being kicked out of your house, most problems are just memories. We're thinking about the past and feeling all kinds of things about it, or we're projecting into the future, anticipating that we're going to have feelings, but having the feelings right now. And we know, if we're meditators, or you've ever had a peak experience where you have that moment of awe and everything gets very still and quiet and you just know everything is fine. Those weird in-between moments where we're fully aware that we are not just our physical body. We know it because we can feel it in those moments. Some people will describe that witnessing a birth or witnessing a death. Those powerful moments where everything stops Everything outside of what's happening in this present moment doesn't exist. When a baby's being born, nobody in the room is thinking about their rent check. When someone is dying, nobody in the room is thinking about they owe the IRS money. Nothing else exists outside of that moment. But we choose that. We apply, we define those moments as very sacred and very powerful. And we are trained in that. Our culture says those moments are sacred and powerful. And you can feel the difference. Something momentous is happening. So you're willing in those moments to settle in, open the door, be in that moment the truth of you. And it's only later that we pick back up our mind and we go back to worrying about the IRS or the rent check or the flat tire or the cheating spouse or whatever it is. So I'll come back to this, but I want to tell you, I first started playing with this idea when I was doing energy blessing wheel. So energy blessing wheel is my spin on, I was trained to do medicine wheels, in the Cherokee tradition with my, through my mother and her mentor, Kira Morgan, but medicine wheels are large and they're part of the Native American culture. And it just, a few years ago, I just started doing something a little bit different. So it's just picking up things and forming a wheel of intent with objects. And I'm intuitively choosing the objects for the person or the animal. I put them basically in your basic medicine wheel structure, but they also can take all kinds of different shapes because I don't feel that I'm directing it. I feel in those moments the same way I feel in a session. I put myself aside. My thinking mind takes a back seat, and I'm completely focused in the moment. And of course, I feel peaceful and connected, and I feel like in total trust. I completely trust my intuition as a facilitator, because y'all know I don't like the word healer very much. As a facilitator of someone else's experience, as a space holder, I have 100% confidence in that and complete trust. So back when I was doing this in 2014. We were living in Thornton, so 2013, 2014, Thornton, Colorado. I asked myself, why don't you just stay in this space? You're centered, you're grounded, you're at peace, you trust that everything that's happening in this moment as you're setting up this process to do a distance Reiki session is how I would start those. Now, of course, we do distance forest Reiki sessions, which you can see on the website. But I asked myself that, why don't you just live here? Why are we turning on healer mode is what I call it in my head. I'm going into healer mode. Why do I go into healer mode? Why do we do that? Why do we say, okay, now I'm going to let myself be centered and stable and peaceful and completely present in this moment, trusting that whatever intuitive information comes through, it's accurate, no matter how ridiculous it might seem. There was a time in a session that I was hearing a Beatles song. And I was like, well, I don't, whatever. I trust everything that comes through. So I said to the person on the table, I'm hearing this particular Beatles song. It had significant meaning for her. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't hesitate to tell her. I trust it. So why don't we extend that trust all the time? Why are we going from meditative state to getting pissed off in traffic. I've said for a long time, and I'm certainly not the only one, that if you don't take your meditation practice with you when you leave your house for the day, it's really not that useful. You get some benefit out of it, but you shouldn't be leaving your meditative state on the mat or on the cushion or wherever you meditate. You should be, hopefully, trying to extend that awareness and that state of alert peacefulness in action as you go. You should be taking that with you. So when he was saying that, it made me remember that. Like, why don't we live like that? If we'll do it for a client or a family member or an animal who's suffering, and we know we have this ability, and everyone has this ability, by the way. You may not have been trained in it, but you can learn it. High intuition and empathy and things, empathicness, those are learnable skills. Some people might have an easier time learning that skill, but everyone can learn that skill. Those skills, it's a whole skill set. But why do we feel like we have to flip a switch and only step into that confident, powerful, 100% trusting the process of life state, and then we turn it off at the end of the session? Which is what he was saying. So she was saying, well, yes, I feel fine now, and also, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, whoa, hold up. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. He was like, wait a minute, that's your mind. You're in a peaceful state, and your mind is trying to get you to come back to the story, right? That's what mind does. No big deal. And he was saying, do you think that your being, your pure being, cares that your mind is trying to go back to the story? It doesn't. Your pure being state, and if you're a facilitator or a healer, or you've ever experienced that peak state, that's the truth of who you are. And we can let our mind go back to the problem and go back to the problem and go back to the problem, and we don't have to fight it. We don't have to resist it. We don't have to make ourselves wrong for having a mind that always wants to go back to whatever bone it's chewing on. We've all got that border collie brain. And it will, if you don't give it a job, it will find a job. So you give it something to solve, you give it a chant to say, or you teach it how to be calmer, which you can. And advanced practice meditation, your thoughts will stop, or at least that's my perception. I used to say your thoughts never stop, so just get used to them. But I've had too many experiences where they weren't there. Or in my perception, they weren't there, because when I heard them kick in again, I was aware that they hadn't been there. I might be crazy. Let me just say that. But I believe it's possible. So if that's possible, what if we viewed life from healer mode? What if we got it that it isn't everyday regular us stepping into this peaceful, powerful, I'm holding space place person? But flip it. We have it backwards. We're that peaceful, powerful space holder, fully present, fully alive, fully embodied being. That's us. We're not stepping into anything, because that never goes anywhere. What comes and goes is our awareness of our thinking, our awareness of our obsessing, calculating, planning, strategizing, arguing in our heads with people who've been dead for arguing with dead people, resurrecting problems that you had 20 years ago and worrying that they're maybe going to happen again, waiting for the other shoe to drop. What would life be like if we continually brought ourselves back to healer mode? If we continually brought ourselves so intensely into the present moment that when we heard the dog start barking, we would just let her bark. Let him bark. So what? Your mind's obsessing that, the picture's crooked on the wall. Your mind's obsessing that the number in the bank account isn't what you think it ought to be. Okay. So what? A long time ago, Martha Beck wrote a blog post, or maybe it was in O magazine, about the so what. It's a great response. All the worrying doesn't work. It gets said in addiction land all the time. Your best thinking got you here. You can't think your way out of this. You can't think up a way to feel better. If you could, you would have. And I hope I'm articulating this. I'm articulating it as well as I can, because this just struck me a few days ago. And it took me back to that. Why don't I just live here? I get in a forest Reiki zone and I'm totally at peace. Even with the lawn that needs mowing, even with chores that need doing that I don't want to do, I don't care. It's okay that I don't want to do them. It's okay that the numbers are not what I want them to be on the scale or in the bank account. It's okay. That's just what mind does. It labels, it evaluates, it categorizes, it says good, bad, right, wrong. That's okay. So what? Where do we think we're going? When we go into energy space, when we drop into a meditation, where are we going? We're not going anywhere. We're just aware or not aware. We're looking to the left and seeing what's on the left side of the room, which doesn't mean the right side of the room doesn't exist. It's still there. We're just looking to the left. So all we see is what's on the left. Then when we want to, we look to the right and we see that side of the room. The left side still exists. We're just choosing to look to the right. We don't have to put so much meaning on things. That is a choice point. That's something we can really work with. You can get yourself calm in that meditative state. If you don't meditate, you can think about someone you love unconditionally. For a lot of us, that's just pets, right? Because people are more complicated and our relationships with people tend to be a little bit more ambivalent. Sometimes we love them and sometimes we don't. But our pets, we usually love unconditionally. You can think about how much you love that dog, cat, hedgehog, hamster, horse, lizard, whatever little creature that you love. And that state that you go into, that heart expansion, that's you. Stay there. Then your mind will kick up and go, well, yeah, but you can't go to work in a heart expanded state. Why not? Why not? Can you imagine what your job would be like if you went to work in that heart expanded state of being? Can you imagine what your drive would be like? I used to play with this a lot more than I do lately. But I remembered that a while ago, and I'm bringing it back, of when I see people when they're driving, I just say in my head, I love you. I don't recommend going up to people you don't know and saying out loud that you love them. That can get you arrested, maybe. It's probably not going to go over very well. Let's just put it that way. But you can say in your head, I recognize you as another human being on this planet, as another aspect of soul that has created this flesh, blood, and bone extension of itself that it travels around the world with, and I love you. We can say that. And when we do, people feel that. Animals feel it. Children feel it. When you go hang out at a coffee shop, think of someone you love and then spread it out. Bigger, bigger, bigger. Fill up the coffee shop with that love. Why not? It's a lot better than filling up the coffee shop with your bitchiness about having to go to work, or your dread or your depression that you have to go to work because this dream you've been trying to create isn't fully formed yet. You know the things. You know the things we do. Why aren't we living with that awareness more often? When we do have the choice, we can make to what we're going to be aware of. That's a complicated question, I guess, or our mind says it is. Let's call it rhetorical for the moment. Can you imagine one better gift that you could give to yourself right now than to recognize that mode, that state, that centered, grounded, calm, I love everything and everyone state is you, and the other blah blah, bark bark bark, woof 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 is not? That's just another aspect of you that you don't have to give any meaning to. It doesn't mean anything. What are you worrying about? Is it something you can control? Is it something you can do something about? Can you take an action to address the issue? If not, why are you thinking about it? It doesn't work. Worrying about money has never brought me one more dollar. And I'm quite sure has pushed a lot of dollars away. And I'll tell you how I know that. Because when I'm worried is when I forget payment due dates. Because I'm worried. And the blood flow in my little peanut brain is going backwards to the survival centers instead of staying forward in the frontal cortex where the date remembering happens. Or the tracking of the details happens. You know what I mean? So how many opportunities have we missed to have a positive interaction with someone because we were staring at the ground, wrapped up in our own tight negative space? I don't know. It's just something to think about. If you're a therapist or a coach or a teacher or anyone that's serving others, you know this state, and we could live there. We could live there if we choose to. If you're in service to others, that's part of what we're going to be covering in the class coming up, Humility for Healers, which, of course, is on the website. And there's only 6 spaces left for that. Go check it out. I might have picked a bad title. I titled it Humility for Healers because I want us to always be questioning everything. To never ever think that we know the one right way to do anything. I want us to always be questioning and never slip into, if our client would only just blah, blah, fill in the blank. We never know the truth of that. That's for them to decide. We facilitate. We hold the space. We offer the tools, and we stand back. So that's what that course is about. And I also just threw in a free human design chart reading, because I'll talk about that on a different podcast, because it's incredible and it's changing my life. But ask yourself that. Who's coming and going? Where do you think you're going? When you go into a meditative state, where are you going? Who's going? Who's standing back and saying, wow, I do a lot of thinking and it's not productive? Who's saying that? Where is that soft, still, small voice coming from? Where is that part of you when you're sitting in traffic? Where is the part of you that can be zeroed in during a birth or a death or something very intensely important? You're zeroed in, extreme mindfulness, and everything else falls away. And you start to live, I suspect. I think I've had brief times of this, certainly not extended times. But wouldn't you just live moment to moment, doing the next thing and then the next thing? That's how Byron Katie describes it. Woman drinking tea, sitting in a chair, period. I have a little video. If you want it, let me know. You can shoot me an email, because this podcast goes everywhere and I won't see the comments, I don't think, if there are any. Email me at info@thatmichellewolf.com. 2 L's, 2 F's. And tell me if you want this video. It's a training video from a program, my very first program I developed, called Shadow Blessings. And it was 40 plus tools for working with your shadow, for figuring out tools that you could use to figure out, by looking at your environment, where your blind spots are. And one of them is called Put the Period Where It Belongs. And it's related to this. Like, if we put the period of our sentences where they belong, right after the objective fact, then we're not going to spend a lot of time listening to that border collie running in circles and barking at the mailman or the UPS guy or gal. We have a UPS driver that's a woman, and she's so small, and I would not want to meet her in a back alley. Like, she's little, and when you just look at her, you would think, oh, what is she going to do? And she comes like hefting out these giant packages. Okay, anyway, going to wander off on a tangent. I really like her. Put the period at the end of the sentence where it belongs. The objective fact. There is a lot of traffic today, period. My partner has a tone of voice that sounds like anger, period. Because you don't know if it's anger unless you ask. Every single time. The numbers in my bank account say this. My budget sheet says that. Period. It's everything that comes after that period that takes us away from presence. From being aware more often of who we are, less identified with the internal dialogue that is not us and will die with this body when this body dies. The mind will die with it. The peaceful, calm, everything is fine, I love you state of being will go on, in my point of view. This would actually not be a good podcast to listen to if you don't believe we're part of some larger, collective thing. Anyway, if you want that video, let me know. Send me an email. I'll send it to you. It's just a YouTube. It's like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. But it's a good practice. Put the period where it belongs, right at the end of the objective fact. The objective fact is something that anybody can see. Anybody can see that there is a lot of cars on the highway. Anybody can see that the number in the bank doesn't match the number on the budget. Anybody can see that. Like an objective fact, you can point to it, you can show it to a bunny rabbit, and they can see it. Everything else is subjective, and it's our interpretation. And we can let that be okay. I'm just stuck on that part. I know I'm going over our 30 minutes here, but I'm stuck on that part. I love that part. It's okay. You're peaceful, calm. You're doing your healing thing. You're facilitating and holding space. You wrap up the session and take care of the payment and the person's on their way. Or if you're doing a distance session, you feel the energy stop and you go on about your business. And then you go back to worrying. In that moment, recognize you're leaving. If you're going anywhere, you're leaving who you are and going back to what's familiar. Your conditioned pattern of thoughts. The thought patterns that you were trained into through your family, culture, peer group, geographical region. And that we have a choice about. So when you're in the peaceful state and you hear it kick in, you don't have to do anything about it. You can just say, yeah, so what? All right. Like you're worried about, bouncing a check. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. That peaceful part of you doesn't care. That peaceful part of you is, hey, so what? It's okay. You can live in this state or you can live in that state. It's up to you. See what you think about that. Play with it. While you are thinking less and feeling more, go to the website and read the stuff about humility for healers. We start pretty soon, May 6th. It's an amazing group. The women that are in there already are just incredible. Incredible. The space that is open for that group to really look at how we act and how we think about our role as service providers. That's teachers, coaches, therapists, caseworkers, social workers, cops. How we think about it, how we define it, how we act in it, how we let it impact us, what it means to hold space, and what it means to facilitate versus healing. It's all kinds of stuff. And then I've added a page for human design because I'm offering foundation human design readings and then a 9 centers, your 9 energy centers readings and coaching. So it won't be just a reading of your chart and a few strategies. We're going to read your chart, talk about strategy, and then come up with a plan together. So it's kind of like a coaching session, but it is wrapped around human design, which is definitely a direction I am going. All right, that's all I got. I will talk to you next week. I'm going to say it again. Think less, feel more. Bye for now.